house.
It took
whatever it is, round around or something. I still haven't caught on. So then they give us the honor roll tickets for Beach Boys.
Yeah, it was
They have
a
really-
Chainsawing it in the house?
Yeah.
We
Probably
had to
made
get it
on
down,
the
that's what we take it off,
Yeah.
we trim
So-
the limbs off, cut it in half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen Mary Ann? Yeah, she doesn't
And I
find
knew
this
it.
humorous.
No, about, don't talk about Christmas trees.
He
Hey, Mary Ann,
single-handedly
we're gonna
impacted
really
our canopy, our
Hey.
tree canopy with his Christmas.
Oh, that's funny.
There was a 2% reduction in the tree canopy. Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Gosh, we almost matched.
Flag football.
Actually, I had a shirt, some of that in my hand this morning when I got dressed. Yeah.
Hey. Is it through
I was wearing black
the same
pants.
guy though that does the Guardians?
So which
one?
work it in
The
between?
the Guardian is the
There's
helmet
two.
that goes with the top.
I was trying to work today,
No.
So
corporate
that's a local
servers
company
went
here
down
that
this
sells
morning at 11.
What's it called?
Twiddle
Guardian
around
caps.
the office
Interesting.
all
No,
day
this is
today.
called.
Oh, you were down. You were at the office.
There's two people that
Right, because
So I
of.
was trying not
breakers.
to work.
I forgot what it
And
is.
then they
I'm
helped me
surprised
not
he's
work.
not in there.
Yeah,
We bought,
right.
I mean, the
So I'm
high
gonna work
school
from home
bought
tomorrow.
100
There's no guarantee of
200 of them. We bought 160
switched
of them
over
2 years ago.
one.
And
Just the
and
caps?
company
Yeah, it
you
looks exactly
represent,
like that, but it goes right over the top
is-
of the helmet
Oh, really?
and snaps into the face mask.
Oh,
Not a
that's
company you
wonderful.
wanted
He
to
does
have
flag
doing
football
Yeah.
your server.
I mean, there's a lot. I think he
I was
would've
just-
built it
just
or
checking.
outright
Well,
made
they
that
originally
local
blamed it on Nexo.
Send me his stuff.
Yeah.
Send me his contact
And
information. Second lease.
That was,
Yeah,
it
we
went
bought
down
them.
for 2
I mean, since
days,
we bought so
2
many
weeks
of
ago.
them,
And here we are,
Yeah,
it
it's
went
already
down
like
for like a half a day.
$40.
That's about how much they
And
are.
t-
That's about
they
how much
apparently had some at the virus attack. So in order to prevent it, they shut down everything.
That's
It's
gonna
like,
help with our
don't
numbers,
have
'cause-
we didn't have a single concussion
you know,
this year.
internet.
Oh, really?
These are your kids.
Firewalls,
Not in football.
Right.
God,
Well, we
flag
had one.
virus
We had one
protection.
during a game,
Mhm.
actually, but it was
All
his
three
head.
teams?
I don't know what
Yeah,
they're
his
doing.
head hit the
That is not my field of
Not
expertise.
your
He came
area.
over the top.
Not your area.
Whoever is it
His
is,
your area.
head was
Is
slapped
this-
around.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we're.
No,
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
That's my
that's-
kids that say bye-bye.
Oh, yeah, he's like,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how we're,
and everything.
in some ways,
Huh.
got a.
that's cool. Yeah, they're gonna do it in flag, but they haven't told the Steelers. We don't want the Steelers.
Smart. But I mean, it's hard to say how much of it is that versus. I mean,
Yeah,
there's so much.
everything else.
The amount of time we have to tackle.
Ready?
Hit and practice is so little.
If everyone will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrence variance applications, comprehensive land use plan, and plan map and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. Allow me to introduce the other board members. To my left is Fred Edwards, Samit Shaw, Paul Moore, and to my right is Chris Doty and Wilson Borden. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking. Leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised, and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. At this time, we'll call for public comment. That's general public comment, anything that is not on the posted agenda. Robin, do we have any?
No, we don't.
Okay, I will close public comment. Approval of the action minutes.
I move we approve the action minutes from the November 16th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Robin?
Okay. The next item is U 16-01, VC 16-03, consideration of a use permit for a private school with a maximum of 25 students within the existing structure at 2785 Francis Road and a concurrent variance by Chrysalis Experimental Academy. As of this morning, staff received a letter of withdrawal request from Mr. Alexander, who is the headmaster of the Chrysalis Experimental Academy. So therefore, I will not go through a staff presentation on this, although since it has been legally advertised, we are open to, if anybody wants to speak about this item, you're more than welcome to submit a yellow card, fill it out, and bring it up to the top. And Mr. Alexander's here as well to speak if necessary. So.
Okay. Does the applicant like to speak before we make the motion? Okay. Okay. Anybody wants to speak? All right. You just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Greg Bunshoe. I'm a resident of 14690 Glen Creek Way. That's Shadowwood Farms subdivision, and it's located a couple hundred yards away from the applicant's property. The applicant's withdrawal notwithstanding, the community surrounding the applicant's property on Francis Road has significant interest and created significant opposition to the applicant's request for a special use permit for a private school. And for purposes of the record, as well as the Planning Commission, and in anticipation of future special use permits perhaps being heard, I thought it was worth noting that the surrounding neighborhoods of Clearbrook subdivision of Roxbury Estates, which is directly across the applicant's property, Clearbrook is directly adjacent to the applicant's property, and members of Shadowwood Farms, my neighborhood, are rather unified with respect to their opposition to the special use permit. Traffic considerations were one of the primary considerations, not only for this school use, but also for the public schools that exist down Cogburn Road. What staff and planning commission members may realize is that schools of any size have material consequences to traffic, and even if they're not on the affected road as this applicant's property was. Francis has become a material cut-through for folks who are no longer able to travel down Cogburn Road during regular business hours. Many of you have had that experience, and consequently, the slight increase of this applicant's proposed school use simply tops off the already rather significant use associated with the use of Francis as an alternate thoroughfare to avoid Cogburn Road. And then lastly, the special use permit situation has created what perhaps can best be described as a pop-up zoning situation. We understand as residents that it is an approved use. Robin has been very helpful to us in helping us understand what the implications are of Ag 1 and I think it's AAE1 zoning might be, and that special use for schools and for churches is appropriate. However, with respect to Francis and I'm sure other areas of the community, any school use proposed creates a burden on traffic, creates potential detrimental impact on property values, and we would suggest to both the Planning Commission and the City Council that further consideration be given to the restrictions on special use permits in Ag 1. For those of us who are residents and are becoming educated about special use permits, we'll be compelled, I think, without further restrictions to fight these battles sort of again and again and again in an area like Francis Road where there are still large tracts of property undeveloped. And also, it may compel us to start to move toward an R1 classification where a special use permit is not permitted but drives denser residential areas than what might otherwise be developed. So our suggestion and recommendation is to note our opposition to the applicant's use permit, but also to raise awareness with respect to the idea that we think that special use permits in Ag 1 should be examined, and we'll, with Robin's suggestion, take that up at the City Council meeting as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No, I do not have any other comment cards.
Okay. With that, we'll close public comment and open up for motion or discussion.
Make a motion that we accept the withdrawal of U16-01/VC16-03.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
Okay. So the next item is RZ 1610, consideration to amend the rural Milton overlay, single-family uses, height. This is a short and sweet text amendment, but it's a little bit, we needed further explanation, and I sent it via email as well as you have the examples and explanation that we'll go through in front of you. I can also put it up on the overhead if you like. Do you want to just work off your sheets?
Work off our sheets.
Okay. So we've been working, our city architect reviews every single house for height that comes permitted throughout the city, not just in the rural viewshed, but in general, but this is specific to the rural viewshed. And let me get to the right section. Sorry. I got it. Okay. So this is dictates single-family type uses within the AG1 ordinance. And if you go to the middle of the page, C, height, generally we say there shall be a maximum height limit of 2 stories with a maximum height of 28 feet from average finished grade to the bottom of the roof eave. And so when we calculate this, obviously you all know what a roof eave is, so it's not to the top of the roof, but to where the wall intersects with the roof structure. And then it is measured from average finished grade. So for instance, obviously if you're on a slab, it's, a slab. It's all on one grade. If it's a basement or a house with a basement, and let's say there's a 10-foot drop, and you have maybe 2 to 3 sides that are not exposed, that we only have one side exposed, and it's on a slope, we would take the measurement from like 4 points around the house and measure it to the eave, and that would be the average. Okay, so that's your basic how we measure the height of a building. So what's happened? So we've been working. It's kind of a bigger picture, a holistic picture of trying to work through situations with really large subwalls on houses as well as retaining walls. So you all just approved, and City Council approved a retaining wall ordinance, and tonight we're also looking at the steep slopes ordinance. And again, this is a height issue, so it's kind of like a three-pronged approach of trying to resolve some of our difficult topography that we have here in the city. And with eliminating, or not eliminating, but reducing the amount of retaining walls, because the retaining wall is only up to 6 feet, so then that forces builders to probably try to get a larger subwalls to be able to get their house positioned on a very, if they have a difficult topography. So to give a little bit of lenience to that, Bob, our city architect, has come up with scenarios, and actually we came up with this amendment in number 2 that says, utilizing the above formula, in no case can the height credit exceed 8 feet. The height credit is defined as the additional height allowed per average grade. So if you have this packet here, the first page, number 1 scenario is a slab house, like what I just spoke about. So average grade is 0, so you have no credit. So you literally would measure it from the ground to the eave. And 28 feet is the maximum that you'd be allowed. If you had a basement house with 50% exposed and a 10-foot drop in grade, you get a credit of 5 feet. So 28 plus 5 is 33 feet is the maximum of the height of that building or of that house. And then number 3, it's another example, 25% exposed, 10-foot drop in grade, credit equals 7.5 feet, and then you add that to 28 feet, which equals 35.5. And lastly, another example is basement house with 50% exposed, a 15-foot drop in grade, and you get a credit of 7.5 feet, which again is 35.5 feet. So the next page shows kind of an example of if you were looking at the different various types of grades and the credits that you would get, assuming the grade change at 10 feet. And then the third page shows an example of a house with a 10-foot grade change and a 10-foot basement, and then he allows 1 foot per floor. So you have 10-foot basement, high basement, a foot for the floor joist, a 10-foot first floor, 1 foot, and then 9 foot. So the total of that is 31 feet, and that's okay because it gets a credit. It goes back and gets a credit.
So, Robin, in that example, I'm sorry, walk through it again if you would, please, on that one. So it's a 10-foot basement or 10-foot first? 10-foot basement, 10-foot first floor, 9-foot second floor?
Right, that's just an example, right. And then each floor, physical floor, is approximately 1 foot.
Right, right, because you've got the joists. But, so it's 28. They would get a...
They could go up to 20. I mean, that's an example. So the credit would be with a 10-foot drop or change in grade, they would get...
5 to 8 feet.
Yeah,
right?
5, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Depending on what's exposed.
And so it's
I think
still within the allowable on that one.
Right.
So what I'm thinking about is, there are a lot of upper-end homes that are being built now north of, $700,000, and a lot of those are coming with higher ceilings in both basement and first level, maybe not so much on the second level.
Okay,
If
so
you've got a
explain
10-foot to 12-foot basement, and you've got a
12 foot.
12 to 14-foot main floor,
Right.
and you've got a 8 to 10 foot third floor, you're going to exceed.
Okay, so let me hold that thought,
Okay.
okay? Because there's on the last page, there's an example how
Okay.
they can kind of work through that. I mean, Bob can work
Well,
with
I mean,
builders.
without any changes, that wouldn't be allowed now. The
Right.
example he just
Right.
gave, so I mean,
Yeah, that's
how,
right.
how could they have homes like that?
So hold
Okay.
the thought, and I'll get to that. Now, it may not be that gargantuan, but I'll show you how it, somewhere in the middle of the road, that we can work through that.
Okay.
So with that, this first example from the first page, it says 50% you could get 33 max, so that's 20, that's 31, so
you
they
still
could
on the
actually
third-
add another couple feet to
Are you
be
still
the
on the third
max.
page?
Yeah, on the third page,
Yeah.
yeah. So they could actually go up to
To
33 feet.
Yep.
Okay, so then the next page, you have a drop of 15 feet, a 12-foot basement, 10-foot, and 9, and so it's 35 and a half feet is okay because you get 36. But here they do a subwall, so that's part of the explanation of how you could end up getting a little bit taller, because you can still do a subwall and then measure it from that subwall. The two foot,
So
6 inch
subwall,
subwall.
meaning not from grade?
Well, from the grade, he's got it at the grade, the bottom of the grade, but it lifts it up 2.5 feet, so it gives that extra amount to be able to.
That's
Have
right.
that
Maybe I
large.
don't understand what a subwall is then.
So if you have it's not the basement wall, but it's a subwall to get the foundation up.
Well, you could grade into it, so literally you'd be stepping down into your basement, because you'd have to grade up a little. Would be one of the ways of dealing with that issue,
Okay.
okay?
So
that's
we'd come
one
out of the
little-
basement, you'd have to take a step up to get to your terrace level?
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
That's exactly right. But
Right.
it's a way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And again, it's based on grade and these issues that come up. But
Mhm.
Bob has been able to, by the use of grading in a little, and then there's another solution, which Robin will get to it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just to show you the different ways that Bob has been able to work with these very severe slope, grades that are coming up.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and so the next example is a 20-foot grade change, and then so the subwall goes up to 3 feet. And again, he does the calculations of the grade changes as, well, he has 10 foot, but it looked like it was 15 foot. Max credit is 8 feet, so maximum wall height or maximum height would be 36 feet. So, so that's 3, 15. So yeah, so that's just another example of a 5-foot. That's with the retaining wall. This one's a little bit different. So you can have up to 6-foot retaining wall, and then you do a fill, and then you do go up to the exposed subwall, and then you start your basement. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So your question about how to deal with these extraordinarily tall houses. So there's a couple of things, and the second to last page is an example. You could do a rear dormer, because we don't count that. So you could have a full, almost third story, and then you put, or a second story, and then you put a dormer on it, and then you just measure from the average grade to the soffit.
So that second story isn't counted because it's a dormer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a way, another method of dealing with these issues.
Right.
But we felt that the 8 feet was sufficient to handle most reasonable cases. I mean, if it became very extraordinary, well then the steep slopes ordinance that you're going to look at will probably kick in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and so this had a 20-foot change
Yeah.
in grade, so that was pretty dramatic. And then the other option to try to work through a height issue is a tray ceiling on the interior. So he has an example of that, and he's worked with other builders to create a couple of, or 2 or 3 extra feet, and so that they can do a little bit taller house. I mean, Bob was making a point that, you know, if you get much taller than that, you get out of a residential feel. I mean, you start getting into more commercial size and non-residential feel. I mean, I know we have large
Yeah, the
houses.
state homes, yeah.
But, I mean, I think it's, you know, Bob is pretty good about working with the different property owners, and they end up always liking the product better, actually, in the end, whether it has to do with height or other issues, so.
Okay. And I think the answer is, at least for my concern about it, is if there is going to be an estate home that wants to have something different than what we've adopted, they would have to come in and ask for an exception to that.
Right, a variance.
Ask for a variance. And,
Buying Cherokee.
I'm sorry.
Or buying
Yeah.
Cherokee or
Yeah.
Forsyth, I mean.
well, I just think, there's
Or
something
being
about.
overly generous, I mean.
Yeah. A couple of the new neighborhoods that have been cut in have been, or if we're trying to endorse or encourage larger lot sizes, and some of those may end up being estate lots with estate homes on them, we may be asked to consider
So, yeah.
a variance for the development of that subdivision if they're all going to be estate homes, for example.
I mean, I think that they're still within reason. I know with the development on Taylor,
Yeah, that river bend.
River edge.
Riverside, yeah.
so we had a very large 16,000 square foot home come in for review, and
Yeah.
they didn't have any issue with height. I mean, that's a pretty substantial size house, so I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that we can't work with them.
I think about some of the estate homes on the very back of the White Columns gated community, or you think about the Cawley home on Freemanville.
And you know, those were all permitted under Fulton County, and they
Yeah.
dealt with it. They had a different, the height, I believe, under AG1, which would have, at least for the Collie home, would have been, I think it's 45 feet.
Mhm.
And that's not it's an average, but it's not to roof eave, but to the top. So that was done a little bit
I
differently.
think you average, and I'm thinking of my house because it's 10 feet before the basement floor.
Right.
But if you average that, the rest of the house
It's
is
not
level.
very tall, right, yeah.
So the
It's
average
normal.
would bring it,
Right.
because it's 40 feet to the eave on my house from the ground.
Right. But if you averaged it, it would.
It'd be okay.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
great.
Any other questions, or?
No, I think it's good work.
How many times does it pop up? I mean, just out of curiosity.
He has to have discussions with, I mean, probably once a week. We get a lot of permits, I mean,
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
and we work them through,
yeah.
you know, but we can see, looking ahead, that now that we've got the retaining wall ordinance in place, there's only so many other ways you can skin the cat. And one of
Yeah.
them would be by the use of a very large sublot.
Yeah.
And so we really felt that we needed to think about that.
With
I'm just trying to think of an example that might be weird. So if you're at the Union, that house that has a real
Yes,
big deal
right.
on that,
We've all seen it, yes.
so
that wouldn't be allowed anymore,
That-
right? Yeah.
that would not be allowed?
No,
or-
because of our retaining wall ordinance
Okay,
that was
Too
tall,
passed, but it was
yeah.
built before
Okay.
that.
Right,
Okay.
That's a good example
that's
of
right.
where the retaining wall ordinance would come into play.
Okay.
But actually, that house in particular probably would be in compliance with this.
Because of
You
where
guys-
the
you
grade
got-
in the backyard is, right?
Yeah.
Because it's based on, would it be based on below the driveway, or would it be based on where the back
It's-
patio or whatever?
Well,
the
it's
porch is?
wherever the footprint of the building, of the structure
building
is, and you
Okay.
do the average grade
So it
from
may, you're
wherever
right,
it
it may,
is.
it may
Might have
fit.
actually
may
been
fit.
compliant because the front of the house is at street level.
Yeah.
It's got a big drop off the back, but the retaining wall allows the yard to
Yeah.
exist, basically.
Okay.
And then I think based on the retaining wall ordinance that we just passed, they would have had to have tiered that to the one big wall.
And from y'all's experience, what is, is 28 feet? I mean, is this normal, standard across the board? I don't
We
know.
have not had a problem.
Okay.
Bob,
for 10 years,
has been able to work it through.
Okay.
with all
So it's been
the,
in place for a
Yeah.
while.
I mean, we haven't had a complaint yet.
The only thing I can see happening is with with the remaining land in the price points that we're getting into with the acreage, or cost per acre, you may get more estate homes rather than,
And to your point, you
Traditional
can go
subdivision.
get a variant.
And
You
you-
can go in
and
front
we
of the
don't
committee
need
and
to-
say, we've got 20
yeah.
acres and nobody's ever gonna see this, and here's
we
why
don't need to
we wanna do it.
legislate for something that hasn't happened at this point. If we've got all these, if we've
Okay.
got this history of not having to legislate for that, why add,
I disagree.
why add regulations to it that we don't have to?
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure we at least thought about it, and you guys
Yes,
did with
yeah,
this, so.
And, you know, but we can see that the land that's coming up for development now is the more difficult pieces of land, and that's what we're concerned about.
Okay.
Just like we said.
Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, nothing looks worse than a 15-foot subwall and then a basement and a porch that's 48 feet off the
Right,
ground.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Like some of the stuff that's in the manor is crazy.
Yeah, some of the scary lofty porches.
Like,
Yeah.
fall
Do
off
zip
40
line to
feet.
get down to your
Yeah.
driveway.
I know. Okay.
All right, ready for a motion? Let's hear it.
I move that we accept, text, is it a text amendment? RZ 16-10, to amend the rural Milton overlay for single-family uses for height, section 64-1141C, to read as staff has proposed.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Okay, the next item is RZ 1611, the consideration to amend the Crabapple form-based code as it relates to building units allowed for parking structures, Article 19 of the zoning ordinance. So I apologize for yet a last-minute change after further discussions with the staff. And I've put the hard copy in front of you for this item with a new requested change under 1.6.10. So instead of doubling the maximum units allowed, what we're recommending is that the maximum amount be the same as the TDR max. So that's why I've included that table 10, which that's not being amended, but that's just showing you where that location of that reference is. So what it says now, or what we're proposing, is the number of building units allowed on a site may be increased by 2 building units for every 1 parking space. So maybe I need to explain that first. So in the ordinance here, in Crabapple only, not in Deerfield, we have written into the ordinance that if you create public parking, either located within a parking structure having 2 or more above-ground stories, including the ground level, or is located within a parking structure having 1 or more below-ground stories, and C, is available for exclusive use of off-site restaurant, civic, or office functions within a straight-line radius of 600 feet, blah, blah, blah. Parking spaces meeting 2 or more of the above conditions shall only be considered as meeting 1 condition for this purpose of building unit bonus. So the problem was there was no cap to it. You know, whereas you can see on table 10, there's a cap to the TDRs. When you get bonus, you get additional units. So if you had somebody who added 20 parking spaces, then that meant that they could get
40 units.
40 more units.
At
And that's
2,200 square feet, right, or something
right.
like that?
Well,
Or-
it depends. It's 40 housing units or 22 times
2. It's 4,500 times 20.
right.
Yeah,
So it was
So
crazy.
it was, yeah, there was no cap on it.
Right.
Right. And so we had one example of a developer trying to put 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound flour bag. So this is where we came up with we need to fix this loophole, and that's why we're proposing it to be the same as the TDR max.
So I get the 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound flour bag. I like that analogy. I use it a lot for a lot of the development that we do. But what's the underlying motivation for the change in the first place? The fact that there wasn't a cap, or the fact that we're trying to bonus somebody for putting more parking, or something totally different than that?
We just needed a cap.
Okay.
Yeah, it just, there was no cap.
So the bonus already existed.
Yes,
It
it's
just
already
didn't have a
always
cap.
existed. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just there was no cap to it.
Right, yeah, we always had the bonus. We thought that was a good idea to encourage underground parking.
I don't
but-
know how Fred missed this oversight when we first went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Because there are probably no typos.
Right.
We
Exactly.
have had developers that have come in and tried to see how
Thanks.
they can absolutely max out that 1 acre.
Yeah.
And it got to be, it just couldn't be done, but they felt they could do it because this bonus was available. And so we just need to be realistic in terms of what their expectations could be.
Well, I got to thinking about the bonus part when I was reading it, for assessing its total value. To be honest, I didn't realize we had the bonus in place before in the first place.
Yeah.
So my question, without realizing that, was, what's the true underlying purpose of the bonus? Is it because we want more parking to be dedicated to, like in Crabapple in particular, we're going to need some parking,
Right.
but if they're going to put more parking, it's going to compromise their ability to do a developed space, the build out of a business or a residence or whatever the end result is, right? So is the objective to get them to give us the benefit as a city of more parking?
Well,
'Cause
we
here's-
wanted to, parking always limits density,
Yeah.
it's always a
Right.
limiting factor.
Which is where I'm going with this.
And we felt that, we've capped the 3 stories.
Uh-huh.
You can't go over 3 stories.
Right.
But we felt that.
3 stories above ground.
Correct, that's right. But we felt that if someone could come in with a good mixed-use project, and that we've already vetted the density for TDR to be at, 9 or 14 units, whatever section you're looking at, transit zone. So that seemed to be a good density limit. And so either by using TDRs, purchasing TDRs, or by providing some below-grade parking, that would be 2 ways that you could attain the maximized density level. And, we feel density is good. It's a walkable community. If it's, if
Well,
it meets all our codes.
density to a point is good.
Density to a point, but
That's
as
exactly
we
what we
defined it
need,
here,
yeah.
though, but we have some definitions, we've already done the work in terms of capping the TDR, and we felt that should be the same cap to be used by anyone who wanted to use the underground parking method to
Right.
provide that same density.
Yeah.
So that was the thinking.
So one of the things I had in mind when I was measuring it was some of the feedback that I heard when I attended the Crabapple introduction meeting that was done by the consultants. And although people liked a lot of what they saw, and I did too, some of the pushback was, boy, it just looks pretty intense. For the Crabapple that we know today, we know it's going to change, and it's going to change for the better, because it's going to be all the fantastic things that are planned for that. A lot of it we need, and it'll be a great destination place. But it was sort of, to use the analogy from before, to some people it was 10 pounds of crabapple and a 5-pound historic crabapple. And there's got to be a balance to that.
Yeah, and there is a balance, you're right, and I think certainly by capping the stories, the 3 stories above grade, is certainly one way of doing that. Now, for instance, the DRB next month will be reviewing a development. It's allowed, so there's no rezoning or anything along those lines, but it is a mixed-use development that's going to be coming in directly across the street from the library. And they are
Right.
going to be increasing the density allowed up to the TDR cap by using the underground parking. So they're putting in some underground parking there. So it's a way of making a project more viable, obviously. But as you look at it, it is the 3-story, and it's a very, very high-quality development. And I think if you saw it, you wouldn't say, oh, well, there's increased density there, and I don't like it. I mean, it looks very, very classic. And, you'll,
Well, I think,
pardon?
Kathy, last week Alpharetta showed in the newspaper, you know, they're now proposing the second parking deck.
Yes.
Now, would we have anything that would preclude that same thing happening here? In other words, in another, I'm trying to think of a piece of property where you could do it, but where another parking deck,
We don't have any parking deck.
Yeah.
right,
I mean, a first one, I mean, that's what we've looked at.
Yeah, we've looked, and, you know, the economics is such that we really can't look to a private developer because
Right.
we don't have as much, there's not enough land for a private developer to, you'd
Oh,
have to
okay.
acquire so much land to make it worth his while to put
Right.
the deck. So it really comes down to the city and
Okay.
being the willing participant of building such a deck.
right.
And that's part of what we are discussing as part of this placemaking plan for Crabapple.
Mhm.
You know, in terms of what our parking needs are, how we can resolve that. Whether we need a deck, do we need valet areas instead, or,
Mhm.
you know, I think we haven't finished that conversation yet, but it's certainly something that we ask our consultants to look into because it is a big issue. But at this point, there's no solution, although we certainly have talked about various locations where decks could be.
Could be. Okay.
Well, we know we're under committed right now on parking. We know from the get-go that the consultants identified as,
Yes.
as participants in all the charrettes identified, the parking was going to be an ongoing issue up there. So there's got to be some sort of solution. So I'm in favor of some sort of a credit, but I don't know what the right math is on that, where you don't give so much of a credit that it becomes more lucrative to not, I don't think we can ask, let me say it differently. I don't think a developer would go to the extreme of overbuilding on parking for the sake of the development credit he would get,
Oh, sure, I think.
No.
because we're still going to be underserved in terms of what the total parking demand is going to be. I don't think any one or two or three or even five people decided, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the credit, that we'll still have enough parking for what we think the demand is going to be there.
Right.
So I'm just having this conversation for the sake of vetting it, because I didn't come to a hard conclusion myself, other than saying, I think it needs to have more discussion about the value of the credit, and is the credit amount the right amount? Not realizing that we had a cap, or didn't have a cap,
Didn't have a
Right,
cap.
didn't have a
so.
cap.
And we have a cap that's been vetted through with the TDR process. And the sense of that it was, calculated and studied when
So
this
the-
was put together.
So in the example that you were giving a minute ago about the potential for the mixed-use development, there is going to be some underground parking
Yes.
to that. Will the parking, if it's approved, only meet the needs of that development? Or will it have surplus parking that could meet some of the other pent-up demand that we're likely to have? And I'm talking about pent-up demand, I'm talking about the finished product of Crabapple, obviously,
Right,
not
right.
as we go through the stage of the
I
development.
think there's some extra, but their intention is to build a later phase, which will then
Yeah.
take up some of that parking and certainly will create more parking need,
I
so.
mean, part of the ordinance is that it needs to be open to other people to use, so if
Mhm.
it's mixed use with condominiums, they can't just lock up the parking and let nobody else in. They don't get a credit for that.
Mhm.
So just by, maybe the customers of those shops or those restaurants could use that. So, I mean, it helps with the parking,
Yeah.
Mhm.
supply. It doesn't solve it, it just helps
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but with the increased density, they would still need to have the requisite number of parking
Right,
spaces.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they still have to meet our other parking minimum
And-
standard.
Yes,
Right.
which is an important part.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other discussion?
I move we approve RZ 16-11, consideration to amend the Crabapple form-based code as it relates to building units allowed for parking structures. Article 19 of the zoning ordinance.
Second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
Just give me one
All right.
sec to read my notes again.
And this would be on the one that was the revised language,
Yeah.
yes.
So I would just add one word to that revised language. I think it should be specified under the transfer of development rights.
Actually, you
Under
can read it
transfer-
away.
I mean,
Oh.
I think it's fine
Under
without
transfer
it,
of
but
development rights.
Yeah.
we can,
Okay.
You good?
Yep.
All
Thank
right,
you.
any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
okay, so now we get to the fun part. The dates, I know, that's what I mean, that's the fun part. Yeah. Okay, so we have the schedule for 2017, and Fred made a good point. There's not a meeting listed for January, but that would have been under the old one, and I just didn't put that series of dates on. So that next meeting in January is going to be January 25th. We were discussing, Kathy and I, we thought we'd throw this out, this idea of possibly changing the time of the planning commission meeting, if it was
Oh, yeah,
up to
I'm
you
cool with
all.
that. I don't know about Paul, though.
Well, yeah, my work demands have changed.
Okay.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Okay, good, yeah.
And what are you thinking? No.
6, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what a
what
lot of
everyone
other
else-
meetings are. City council's at
6.
6, and,
BZA's at 6. What?
4 or something, you know?
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
12 to 2.
Yeah.
Does 6 work
Yeah.
with you, Paul?
Yeah, unless,
Okay.
unless something were to change.
Does 6 work with everybody? Let's change it to 6 for now.
Okay.
6 to 8, right? Like a hard
Yeah.
stop.
All right.
So 6 to 6:20.
No, that means we can go, actually means we can go later. You know?
Okay, so any
Keep-
comments or typos or totally messed
Well-
up?
When is
Well-
Memorial Day? Is the 24th the holiday week?
See.
That's usually the first one. It's usually
No, it's end of May.
end
And
of May.
31st.
I mean, I don't have it. I used it
29th,
based-
Paul.
Yeah,
It's the 29th and the meeting's 24th?
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's an extra.
May. Just looking at when will people be away if there was something controversial.
Yes. Yeah, school doesn't get out until the 26th. So
Oh, all right, so we're good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Let's see,
so that's the
then
week
September,
before,
when's-
so we should be fine with that.
That's cool.
The September ones, the Labor Day weekend, or the week, that's just the 2 days after.
Labor Day, well, the 8/23,
No, September 27th.
but isn't Labor Day the beginning of September?
Yeah,
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I like things at the end.
And there's no meeting in December,
Well, I don't have,
We'll just see what happens, I guess.
just like we did before.
Is the week before the 4th of July.
I mean, what do you all think? I mean, do you want to
Let's
just
just keep it.
say,
I mean,
you
I
wanna
don't
keep it
mind.
open?
If we have a December meeting, I like to have it the before instead.
okay, not after,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I say let's just see
So
what
I'll
happens
just
in
do the
October.
next listing. Some of it's because of city council being in 2018, that's why, I have no idea what, I mean, I guess I can calculate it out. See, because it's a schedule
Oh,
of
yeah.
all the meetings.
I hear you. Yeah,
If you want me to add another meeting in December and
I
just
say
make
let's-
it tentative,
Leave it the
let's
way
just
it
wait
is.
till beginning of October. And
Okay.
talk
Yeah.
about
okay,
It. Yeah.
Decide then.
Yeah.
okay.
I think it looks good.
So the only anomaly is that February meeting, that Thursday, because.
Yeah, what,
Yeah, it's weird. They have to have, the city council has it the Wednesday. They have a meeting on that fourth Wednesday because of all the different weird holidays and how the month ends. So I can't have a council meeting and a planning commission meeting. And then Tuesday is the third Tuesday, so there's a BZA meeting, so I can't move it to Tuesday.
Okay,
Okay?
it's fine.
Okay?
Okay. Do we need a motion for that, or is
Sure, let's
Okay,
make it
sure, all
official.
right. Who wants to approve this?
I move we accept the 2017 City of Milton Planning Commission schedule as presented by staff with the change to our meeting time from 7 PM. The new 2017 schedule will be 6 PM start,
I'll second that.
starting in January.
January, yeah. All right.
Actually, you know what? Well,
Are we
Oh,
already
you
no,
already
advertising?
I've already
advertised
advertised, so can we start, we'll
Yeah.
start in February.
February?
So we already have text amendments and
Okay.
I've advertised.
So starting in February.
Okay, so we'll start February.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right.
Okay. So the deferred item, last item is RZ 16-05. Consideration to create steep slope standards in Chapter 64,
I'm
Article
afraid-
17,
afraid not.
Okay.
Division 3, Site Improvement Standards.
Okay.
So,
I got 13 pages of notes.
how many? Oh, come on, Paul. Okay,
Hey, Robin, I
Yeah.
don't have the abbreviated version in this
It's-
one that you sent me. No, I got it. I got
you,
it.
you should
I
have
got
it,
it. I
okay.
got
It's
it.
just
Never
not
mind.
stapled and stuff.
Okay.
I want to go page for page. I want to read every word, including the blue line.
Okay.
You have every right to do that. Until Chris makes a motion.
We may all be walking out by then.
All right, Robin.
Okay, so at the last meeting, on November 15th, you all asked that we further streamline the model ordinance and keep the 25% steep slope threshold and to bring it back to you this month. So that's what we've done. So I don't know what you want, if you want to start with questions or if you want me to go through it or if you, I mean, it's
Or do
only
you want us just to
4.5
approve?
pages.
Or do you want us to prove it?
Is it, let's open up with questions, I guess.
Okay,
Can I ask a couple questions first?
sure.
So we know specifically which properties in Milton we're talking about here?
We
for the
don't
most
know
part?
exactly, no.
But I have a good idea.
I mean, basically what'll happen is when a developer comes in, it's gonna be on their part to make the evaluation of their piece of property. I mean, we can, in general, have a map of areas that meet the 25% or more, but I mean, it's not super exacting at this point in time, and it won't be until a developer comes with a piece of property and they actually do topography, they shoot contours, and they figure out what is the topography of their property, and then that's when they can start calculating what exceeds 25% of areas of 5,000 feet and over, which it probably would be fairly frequent.
And then we'd see it to again review the drop and the slope or whatever.
Right. I
to
mean,
make
you
sure they
stayed. Well, I mean, eventually the
would you
plats
do
are going to
that to
come
make 'em-
here to you, but I mean, by that time they'll be fairly well.
That- That's what I'm saying. You'll pretty well have that defined. that-
Right.
that, Hey,
Yeah, that'll all
don't
be
bother
done.
going in because that's against the 25%.
That's right.
Right.
That's part of the due diligence.
I mean, it's
Right.
yeah.
That. Okay.
Right.
Well, you guys did a map a while ago that we saw at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a
And-
general
and
where the areas were. So
It's
I mean,
mostly our western border and to a certain extent our northwest.
right.
And then there's going to be some anomalies within
Right.
the heart of Milton, but it's more our western.
Well, I mean, I guess to Mark's question, though, I mean, if your B here, it says you can't subdivide it if it applies, how do you know what land applies? I mean, why can't I come in and say, you know what, I'm going to sell off this back half of my property because it's too steep and I'll never do anything with it?
Well, and then that's. I mean, then they
can't
would
do
never
that?
develop. I mean, you could. I mean, no land applies shall hereafter be cleared, developed.
So the
But
buyer,
it just has to come into compliance with it. It's not like it can't ever be developed.
Okay.
It's just saying it has to. It applies to.
And I want to sell it, you know, I want to sell it for a green bond because it's so steep it goes up to some creek or something.
Right, and
You could.
if they decide,
right.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
or
Or you could do
Somebody wants
TDRs
to-
on it, and you
yeah.
could
Yeah.
still
You can sell the TDR.
you could sell the
yeah,
TDRs.
it doesn't lose its value. It still has value.
Now, we tend to like TDRs that have some frontage on roads, but, I mean, but anyway, yeah, it could
Okay.
include that.
Boy, maybe I'm way off.
I'm sorry,
They
what?
get to the property, buy a property, has a steep slope. Could they use that because they had to take out 125 trees on the property? Could the recompense be that they plant those trees on the steep slope?
So we're going to have like a guidelines package that will talk about revegetation. But I mean, if that already exists, whether they have trees or not trees, they're going to have to comply with the ordinance. And then at the time when they start doing their grading, we'll have kind of a how-to package of what's the best practices for revegetation. I don't know if that really answers your question,
Well,
but
what I'm thinking of is on recompense right now, they can do it on other property they own other than the one they're taking the trees from, correct? Even though at one point we said,
no.
No,
Whatever
they
they
have to do it
need to
there or into a
recompense, they have to
pay-go
put
fund.
it on that property. It's only the money that we could use in other places.
okay.
Other public places.
Other
Okay.
public places,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But no, if they're going to
Could
replant.
you see where I was going, that they
Okay,
then
yeah.
move the 125?
No, it has to be on the
around
same
steep
piece of
slope?
property. Yeah.
Right,
It's gotta be the same place.
okay.
Or pay into a fund and you guys.
Right, and
decide.
then we,
That's right.
yeah, but we don't really want the fund because we have a
Right.
pretty hefty fund at this
Right,
point.
and it's probably more expensive for them anyway. We
Would
try
be.
to work with them to bring it back to the property.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Right.
And how much land are we talking about total, maybe? Do we have any rough
I don't.
idea? 20 acres?
No, a lot
What do you
more
mean
than
as
that.
far as of
Like,
steep
it
slopes?
could be, yeah,
Completely total? I mean, I don't know. There's probably hundreds and hundreds of acres of steep slopes.
Yeah.
I mean, a land lot is 40 acres, and that's a pretty low. I mean, that's not. And there's like multiple. I don't know, probably a couple hundred land lots or a couple hundred land lots, and I don't know. It's a large number that would be steep slope.
So I'm trying to understand the difference between this and, let's say, the subdivision they're putting behind my house, where here's a house, 30 or 40 feet below that, here's a house.
Right, and so if
they're
they
putting them up, they're putting them down.
Right,
They're
and-
placing them, so what's the difference?
And so
between
in that
and this?
circumstance, let's say if that was raw land again and we passed this, that development could not be developed the way it's developed. It basically, if it exceeded the 25% slope, if you go to that table, they would be required to have larger lots. And you know that almost every lot in that subdivision behind you are 1 acre lots
yeah.
exactly because they're trying to yield the most. But if you go to page 4, let's say
Page 4 of the new.
you have the new one. You have the hacked down
Condensed
one,
version.
Yeah.
the shortened version. What? Oh.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Anyway, I'm just trying to give an example to Mark that. So let's say that there were a few. Let's say there was like 20,000 square feet on that property that had slopes of 30 to 34%. Well, any new lot has to be minimum of 2 acres, not 1 acre. And so that, I mean, the way that would have been designed totally different because of these new regulations. So you still may have houses up here and down here, but there have been a lot less grading.
Yeah, now I get to see 5 houses right there.
Right, exactly. So maybe it would be 2 or 3 instead of 5. So, and less grading, cut and fill.
Yeah, it probably would have saved a lot of the view shed that went away when they graded that subdivision.
Although I don't think that has a lot of view shed.
Well,
It's limited, but it would affect the interior of the property.
yeah, I didn't mean view shed on the street.
Oh,
I
okay,
meant
in general, the view, yeah.
In the body of the subdivision,
Right,
it would have
exactly.
had a very different feel.
Right.
So, Robin, in looking at this, I'm reading kind of two different ways. You've got a development regulation and a lot regulation, which may kind of be the same thing. So if you're looking at a development that has, say it's 1,000 feet from front to back, and that measurement is 22%.
Right.
And so you could develop the lots, they could all be 1 acre lots, but individual lots in there, what happens when that,
So
when
I
an
think we would-
individual lot may not be in that 22%? You know what I mean? Because the rise over run of
Right.
1,000 feet varies, you know, it might be a sawtooth in between. Does that make
Right,
sense?
Right, right. That's a good question. So I think that, I think they're probably going to try to, as a development, eliminate well, you can't really
Well, I think
eliminate.
Well, isn't the answer to that
Survey.
the 5,000 square foot disturbed area?
Well, that's the minimum that you have to have. So, but to his point, you could the rise to run depending on the area.
But the proof is to the developer.
Right,
So he
for
has
him
to
to-
come in here with a survey and show us how he can accomplish this.
Right.
So you're going to say, okay, from point A to
Right,
point B, here's the line.
And we have to look at it and assess it and determine whether or not that makes sense or not, based
Okay.
on these rules.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
what it's not.
I mean, it's going to be a lot more work on their part, to be
Because
honest.
he may have,
So
let's,
who
I mean,
picks-
Use your
I don't know
example.
if I
So-
mean, I don't know if I would agree
who
with
picks
that.
the line?
so the first
I guess
800
is
feet
Agree.
maybe.
I mean, wouldn't we have to come in and say,
Flat as
whoa, whoa,
pancake.
whoa, this is 25% or
Last
more?
200
I mean,
feet.
we're trusting
Go
them to
straight up.
come in and
Well, I
provide
mean-
Well, they
that
have to have
that
they
it's-
have to have a
Surveyed. I mean, we can't do all the work.
accredited
Yeah.
land surveyor.
Right.
Yeah,
And we
who's
can
gonna
look
do
at it and evaluate it, but they have to do the
Yeah,
actual work.
yeah.
And they can show us a proposal and say, we think it's X, and we may disagree, it may be Y, and that's why there's that section there about disagreeing
Who-
about
Yeah,
the slope.
yeah.
Who picks the line? I guess, so one of my, and then the secondary question is from front to back, and that 1,000 feet, it falls 180 feet. But from left to right, in 500 feet, it falls, what would be 30%, it all falls 150 feet. Or let's just say it falls the same 150 feet from the front corner to the back corner as from the left corner to the right corner, but it's 30% slope from left to right, but it's, but only 15 from front to back. Which line do you pick? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I think it's looking at it and looking at all the setback requirements, as long as he can meet all the requirements, we can go along with from front to back, which is the short, but he'd have to meet all these other requirements. And so I think it's a matter of us assessing his proposal based on a certified
So you could be creative the way you laid your lots out, as long as they all are the right size
And
lots
that's
or
what
whatever, they have the
do now.
5,000.
That's what they do now. I mean,
Okay.
it's the same exercise, but this is gonna overlay over it to say that you've got an additional, set of conditions that you have to meet. And
Okay.
show us how you're gonna do it, keeping in mind all the other subdivision regs and stormwater requirements
Sure.
and everything else. So,
It's actually it's probably going to be less that as the example because there isn't that kind of land left in the city. What you're going to bump into on our western boundaries is some pretty steep slopes. It's not going to be gradual stuff. It's more significant. And so then this is really, in my mind, intended to protect some of those ridges and crests and, some of the topography that may have, some of it you can't grade out, but you could get a lot of what Mark's talking about, where you've got these peg spots where they're dangling off the side of some of those hills. And this precludes that. This prohibits that.
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. I'm just wondering.
It ends up-
Again,
it-
where do you draw the line?
It ends up
literally
protect-
this line, not draw a line from
Yeah.
keeping people
Right,
out, but,
right.
it might have fallen 300 feet, but you've got 2,000 feet from one point to another.
Right, but you probably won't have that, is what I'm saying. With the reality of what the city's got left, you probably won't have that kind of a run to have that be the example. But what it really does is protect some of the unbuildable land that historically has been unbuilt for just that reason, because it's a steep slope. So the developers aren't choosing to build on it. And so by adopting an ordinance that we really hadn't had before, it allows us some of those protections that we, by happenstance, have been lucky
Well, and that's
enough
kind of
not
one of
to
my
have had
questions
so
of-
far,
Two is,
where we thought we had it.
I'm less concerned about a developer being able to draw the line and fitting the puzzle piece in than a guy that owns 5 acres that's owned it for 30 years, that's back in the woods, it borders a stream on a cliff. He wants to build a house there, it's not really bothering anybody. I have a problem. Again, the developer's gonna do, he's gonna have to follow the rules. So I'm less concerned about that, because he's gotta follow the rules. But from precluding a guy that's owned, whatever, he carves off his dad's piece of property and he's gonna take these 5 acres or whatever. And now all of a sudden he can't build his house on the ridge overlooking the creek bottom, which he always wanted to do, or whatever. So I'm more inclined to be worried about that guy than anything
Well,
else.
if he has 5 acres and he has a,
Is this for
I
major?
think that
Is this for major plats or is this for?
No, it's for all, because
so,
what I
okay.
was gonna read was on page 2 at the top, number 2.
Okay.
This ordinance shall apply, and the Community Development Department and Public Works Department shall apply and enforce the provisions of this ordinance to the earliest application for development or building approval required of the applicant, whether that is an application for a land use petition, which is a rezoning or use permit, a building permit, application for preliminary plat, or application for land disturbance permit. So if you have that example of Mr. Smith who has 5 acres and he wants to build his house on the bluff, then it applies to him because that's the smallest denominator of the type of development. And then, I mean, I think we can work with them. I mean, because even if he has 40% slope, he already meets whatever 40%
Well, yeah.
is 3 acres.
Let's use my example as let's change it to where he has 1.23 acres.
Right. Well, then maybe he might need to
Then
get
he'd
a
have to get a variance
and
because
then-
it does say that there's no economic use for your property. Then you can get a variance because if I can build one house, if I have 1.2 acres, I can build a house today, and tomorrow this passes, I can't build a house.
You gotta hurt you.
I'm getting variance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think that takes care of that problem.
And I think that's how it would come in, and we would support something like
Yeah.
that.
No, I agree. I mean, that would be
And,
ridiculous.
But, yeah, but I think those will be few and far between, so.
Okay. So this is predominantly for people platting 10, 20, 30 lots.
Yeah, I mean, but it does apply to everybody,
It
but,
does,
but yeah. Any other questions?
I got
Roll.
a bunch, but,
Yeah, go for it.
so Robin, under applicability, or Kathy, I'm sorry, either one of you, where we narrowed it down to, under 1, a much more brief sentence. Why was, and including the crests, summits, and ridge tops, which lie at elevations higher than any such areas, et cetera, that whole sentence, why was that struck?
Well, from what, a lot of this was done by Carter, but he, basically, we're not calling him crest or all those different things. Hillsides, wait, let me.
'Cause it sounds like
He took
no,
out the
down
word
here.
Because
hillside.
Crest.
by taking those out, you're allowing crests and hilltops to be developed. And I think we'll come back to that later in the document.
Well,
where
I
the-
can't say because that was Carter who took
But
it out.
I'm curious because I wonder if what he's trying to do is clean it up as far as that would meet the 5,000 square feet of contiguous area. I don't know. That's one reason why I would assume you.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why.
I mean, because,
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. It's just have extra verbiage.
Right.
I am too,
Yeah,
you know.
that's all.
I think you've already got the language here to cover what you need.
I don't, I disagree. I think that with some of the other things that we are allowing, where there is some flexibility for development, once you get to that crest, I think you could top the hilltop. If you've got 5,000 square feet of buildable area up there, you would by right be able to build on that. And all of a sudden, you've lost the crest. It would have been otherwise in a view shed, a preserved view shed. So I think without that language, we're compromising some of the beauty that we're trying to preserve with this ordinance. So I'd like to see that sentence go back in. And mayor and council could strike it, but I sure would like to see that go back in.
I think I was only taken out for excess.
If it truly is a duplication of verbiage, then great, strike it, but I don't know that it is. And-
Right, we can leave it in, that's fine, I don't think
Yeah,
it's
we
an
can,
issue
I mean,
with
we
that.
can put it back in.
Can we put that back in?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
think Carter got scared when he gave us 18 pages, and we were like,
Yeah.
not happening. Not happening.
On page 2, I've got a question just under the dispute of slopes calculation. Is there a reason that you guys changed it to Public Works Director rather than Community Development
Well,
Director?
it was, it originally it was kind of bisected between community development and public works, and I felt like the public works had the more expertise than
Right.
community development.
And that's the only reference to Public Works in this document.
In the beginning, it talks about how we work together.
Yeah, but I mean, in other instances, though, it does defer to the Director of Community Development rather than Public Works. That's the only time Public Works is actually mentioned specifically with a job task, other than in the beginning where it says you're going to work together.
I see.
So if
Well,
that was
yeah,
by
I mean,
design,
It's a dispute over a technical engineering issue, so.
so that's why, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that it wasn't just a mistake or,
It would
or
certainly
you
be
in-
Carter. I would defer to Carter anyway,
Yeah.
practically speaking.
okay.
I didn't go to
Same.
engineering school, nor did I.
Same page, C, under G, exemptions 1C, prior development plan approval. It says the following land uses or activities are exempt from the requirements of this ordinance, and then it gives these exemptions, and C is one of those exemptions. So prior development plan approval, any land or part of any land which was contained or in or subject to any development plan, and which was filed with the Community Development Director and approved by the city prior to the effective date of this ordinance. Are there any?
Well, sure. I mean, we
There
have
are?
a lot of things that are in
Or
the
is it
gauntlet.
Fulton
or in the
County?
process. No, I mean, like, we have developments that have been submitted for an LDP. We can't go back and
Oh.
tell them they have to do it. It's basically a grandfathering
Yeah, this is a
clause. I
grandfathering
mean, we
clause.
probably
Right.
could eliminate that.
But
That's
is
just
there
my
just,
logic.
is there 1 or 2 or 20 or?
I don't know. I mean, we've gotten through a bunch of them, but I would say, I mean, we have Ebenezer Road.
Yeah,
The Chatham development's kind of out the door from what I understand.
that's what I heard too.
I mean, there's other developments that are under, well,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's already been
That's already been heard,
developed. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
that's not, yeah.
Okay, but those are,
I'm thinking about things that are like in the process,
Yeah.
either being reviewed for LDP or,
I'm glad it's there. I'm just,
yeah, I mean, that's
as a
what it
grandfather
is.
reason, but I just didn't know if are there a whole bunch, was there a land rush with this coming where they wanted to?
No, not at all. I think most people don't even know it's,
Yeah, look at this room. It's
look at
just
the room, it's just
Packed.
full.
I know, this is riveting. Okay, on page 3, you guys did change the language to say, under general grading provisions A, it's professional of record. So we're giving them
Yeah.
a less credentialed person
No,
than a
so-
civil
so-
engineer?
Yeah.
So this was defined, okay, I changed it back to this because there's actually a definition in the definitions section of the zoning ordinance.
For a professional
Yes,
of
there
record?
is, and it's, whether it's a surveyor or whether it's an engineer, I mean, I'd have to look it up.
So that.
But somebody who's
Okay,
specifically
that's-
relates to
a
the
certified
It's
credentialed
defined.
person, it's not just somebody who says, ah.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's,
Hi,
they
I'm-
have to be
I'm a
certified,
design
I mean, it's
professional.
licensed by the state, so, what, a licensure of
Yeah,
appropriate.
design professional is like it's a true thing. It's a
Yeah, it's not
registered
like somebody who
landscape
claims,
architect,
yeah.
it's an engineer,
Yeah.
there's like 6 different things that the state defines under
Yeah.
this.
Okay,
It's not like somebody who gets their, clergy license from the
Yeah.
internet.
internet. Hey,
But the
Who wants to
definition,
get married?
is it defined as defined? I mean, you
And
have
It
it,
is
Plans
defined in
too.
the zoning, and that's why I changed it
design
to the.
professional of record, that's
Yes,
the
it's
that, and then that's the definition
right.
beside it?
Right, exactly.
okay.
Okay, of record. So what is it, of record?
It means that they're recorded with the
They're probably
state. I mean, they're licensed, and there's a whole list, and you can look up their licensure, so it's a record of their
Right.
Is it required,
professional. Just like a
do we
lawyer
require
or
by
anything
the
else.
state of Georgia, or is it a national?
No, it's usually done by the state, so any kind of, whether it's an architect or engineer or surveyor, it's all state licensure,
Okay,
okay?
as long as
They
we
may
have,
have
as long as we have
certifications that
definition
are
for it.
national, but that's not what we look at.
Yeah, okay, I'm cool as
I
long as
sure
there's a
had that
definition for it.
question too, about 4 places.
Yeah, it does.
No,
make
the
a
reason
couple
why I
times.
changed it was because there was already a definition, and there was no point
Okay.
in
That helps.
creating a new one, so.
Okay, good, okay.
Okay, same page. Under cut slopes, it says, "No cuts shall be permitted solely for the purpose of obtaining fill unless specifically approved in the grading plan." Why are we allowing cuts, period? And we talked at length last time about the fact that we weren't going to allow cuts, because you're basically carving into the hill to get your soil for basically a fill.
Is this cuts within 25%? I mean, are we saying
Well,
you can
it
cut?
It does allow us to review and approve it.
Right, well, if we just say it's, no cuts are allowed, period,
And that's impossible. I think
then
that's
they have to
impossible.
appeal to you for the purpose of a cut.
I think you've got extenuating circumstances. That's why we do have to approve it. So we'll look at it and see, there may be circumstances where a cut may be.
Sure. And I totally agree with that as the answer.
Yeah.
I just don't agree that by offering it up in the language where it's like, oh, it's there, we can get it approved. If you don't offer it
That's not
until they ask for it, then you've got less of it likely to happen.
So I think what the point is that a lot of times developers will cut and fill to move dirt from one place to another on their property or on the development. And they're just moving dirt to move dirt, whereas, maybe they could obtain dirt from another location instead of cutting. But then you think about when you're developing a house, you have to cut in to get the basement. So if you just said no cutting, then it'd be really hard to develop
But we're
a
talking about
house.
cuts in steep slopes in this case. You won't be cutting in a steep slope to build a house because we're saying you can't do that.
Well, but you could do that because we have that table if you have larger
Right.
lot. I mean, if you have a
Right.
30% slope, you'd have a 1.5 or 2 acre lot, so.
But the way I understood cuts when we were talking to Carter last time was you're basically taking dirt from the steep slope to go fill somewhere else, which we wanted to discourage. And I think, although we say no cuts are permitted, all I'm objecting to is the fact that the sentence goes on after the comma. If you put a period there, it still doesn't mean you can't appeal to you guys for when a cut makes sense, and you work with them on it. I don't know that we need to offer it up as a solution
You put
in
a
our
period
document.
there, I don't know if there's even.
But you can cut for a house, but you just
Or
can't
you
cut
could
for fill.
cut for a
Exactly.
So if you
drainage
just put a
or-
period there and scratch the rest out, they can't cut for fill, but they can
I
cut
can
to put a
cut
house
for
in.
anything other than
So I
fill
think
at
that would
point.
make the most sense,
Or
right?
you would have to cut to create.
I'm
your
agreeing with you.
Agree with me,
potential.
yeah.
So just
I- that's the
period,
same question.
period,
Yeah.
scratch the rest.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and then, okay.
And we'll do that. And if Carter has some extenuating reason, we can always bring it up at
You bet.
the city council.
You
Yeah.
can still put a house in, cut it, and cut for a house.
Yeah.
They're not cutting to move dirt, just to move dirt.
Right.
And that's what
Right.
we're trying to stop.
And that's what I,
You can put a house in and then move the dirt. Somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what they'll do.
They're
Okay.
moving the dirt because of the house, not
Okay,
just
we
to
got
move it.
that.
Let me jump back up to,
Carter is on vacation this week, otherwise he would have been here.
Okay.
so.
let me just jump back up to
Yeah.
H1B real quick. So, I know in one spot you have, where it says in excess of, and actually you should put the word of, in excess of 5,000 square feet in area, but then here it just says in excess of 5,000 square feet. Is there,
I mean, we can put in area
Yeah,
to be
okay.
consistent.
yeah. just to be
After feet
consistent.
in an area?
Says, oh,
Put of and
And
then
then
put in
5,000
area.
square
Feet in area, yeah, that's fine. That's a good
Okay.
catch.
Thank you.
You're becoming Fred now.
well, it takes the heat off.
Training.
I do this for a living.
Yes.
They thought I did.
I thought we were going to strike the entire section on fill slopes. We struck, let's see, this is on page 8. We talked about the fact that the table was struck because we weren't in support of fill slope cuts as a practice. So then, by adding in a fill slope section, we're allowing it again. So I think we just don't, either we say we don't allow fill slopes, or we strike that even as a section of the document.
Tell me what the purpose of, fill
It's,
slope.
it's right here. So you're,
So if you can't cut,
right, so you are cut, in order to do a fill slope, you are cutting
Cutting.
from here
So-
to create this plateau with fill.
so I guess with
You
the
don't-
point of not able to cut in order to fill,
This should go away.
then
That
you
shouldn't
either
be
have,
there.
is it true you either have them both, or you don't have them, correct? I mean, because
Yeah.
if we're
Right,
taking
so
away,
You
Well,
could do a
so
fill
not
slope
to
from the
obtain
dirt
fill,
removed
so
from
yeah.
where they put the house that
So
we're gonna allow.
We could delete.
Right.
Which is not a cut.
section.
But
Right.
it's a cut, but it's not a cut to remove for fill, right? It's a cut for a house. So potentially they could take that dirt and use it as a fill slope, but they're not taking it just for that purpose. They're taking it to move it somewhere else.
I guess that's okay, or.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
as
I
measured
don't know
on
that
the
you can
vertical
get rid of all the fill
Yeah.
slopes. You can't have,
Yeah.
you can't move a backyard around, you can't do anything at that point. I mean,
As long as we're not saying you can use dirt
No.
from a cut.
Yep.
I'm okay
Yeah,
with
'cause I
that.
think we
I'm,
took
I'm
care of
right,
the cut.
I'm with you, Paul.
No assumption
on-
exceeds 12 vertical
To
height
me,
of 20
it's saying if
feet as measured
know,
on a vertical plane from the
we've
high
defined
point
no
of the
cut, but I
cut.
still see
And cut right there is not a
that
cut.
that's allowed
Or
to
fill
fill
to the
that
bottommost point, the
that
toe of any fill
place.
slope.
But I could take a hunk off the back of my property that's a big slope and move all that dirt in to fill the slope.
If you read cut in this paragraph, in this statement, I guess, as not the cut from a slope cut, it's actually you're filling in your created plateau. You need this to be able to really understand it. If you're not allowing this cut, but you're filling, if you're bringing in dirt, either from the
Got it.
building your home or bringing it in from a third, from an off-site location, I'm okay with doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay with using the dirt from here to do here, because otherwise now you're, again, diminishing, you're allowing development in steep slopes by doing this.
man, I don't know how you build a house, have a yard without grading. I mean, basically, if you can't fill, you're not grading. I mean, I think you're going down
Right.
the line, but I don't think you can really do it.
Well, all I'm asking you to think about, though, is not in a standard development. I'm talking about the protection of steep slopes.
Well, this thing is both developments and housing, right? So that now you're saying you can't move dirt on a site. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't build anything. if
Yeah, you
move
can.
dirt on it.
I'm saying you can do this. I'm saying you can do this part. You just can't do this part.
But did we not just take care of that part?
I think so. That's what I'm.
Yeah,
I'm-
yeah.
I'm-
Okay, got
I'm-
it, got it,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm now saying
Got it.
I don't need to have
Okay,
what I was
cool.
asking for
Yeah.
clarification on.
Got it, okay.
So I'm saying that J, fill slopes, I was just challenging the wording of it
Got it.
to make sure that we didn't do that. And now that we've talked about it,
Okay.
I'm okay with J
As
staying.
is?
Yeah. Because the cut there, Fred, doesn't refer to the cut in the hill.
Right.
It's referring to the, basically a fill.
Right.
The dirt
Lateral.
could come from, as Mark was saying, from your own home development.
Right.
Or from an off-site location. So then you're probably okay with that. Did you have any more on that? No. Okay, same page, retaining walls. Page 8B. I think I'm talking myself out of the next one, because it's, page 8B says, or the original language said, retaining walls should not be used to create a shelf or other table area within the steep slope. And yet, that's exactly what this is that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
To create a bigger yard. So you still have to abide by our retaining wall ordinance to build that. So, I think I'm okay with that. Talk myself out of it. And then on page 4, put
Table.
now, under revegetation, which goes to page 10. Is there a reason that we
Took all that out?
struck the species selection part of
Well,
that?
so the idea, what we talked about the last time, I think, was that we'd have a guidelines, that's not really an ordinance type thing, but it's a guideline that will have a supplemental information for developers, so. I think
But they
that's what
could
it was.
use what's the word I'm looking for? Non-native species.
I think we usually want them to use native
Yeah.
species.
Right.
And that's what we said, that's what we require.
Right.
And I have to approve the planning plan. And our planning plan requirements are that we use native species.
Okay,
But
so
that
it,
will just
so it
not
is,
be in the
It would
ordinance.
just
so
not-
it is
it's
stated
just-
elsewhere.
It's a supplement.
Okay.
We're gonna
If it's
create a
stated elsewhere, I'm
supplemental
totally okay.
guideline for developers.
Because we know that this other document was a amalgamation of other documents.
Well, it was the model ordinance, and I think they were trying to pretty much do a holistic,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, so as long as it's covered somewhere else, I'm okay.
In drainage, and letter N, is that percentage, is that correct? Exceeding 50?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes, because a lot of times the stormwater's located at the lowest point, so it could be at the bottom of, you know, where the slope is 50%. I mean, so, yeah.
Okay.
So did we took out the whole 1, 2, 3, 4 under
Right.
drainage,
Oh.
again, because it's covered somewhere else?
So the idea was,
Because there's some pretty specific stuff in here about steep slope drainage, where stormwater facilities should be directed to, surface water away from the cut faces or sloping surfaces of a fill.
well.
imagine we don't have
that's-
that covered.
Again, that's all done by Carter, so he has it covered in other sections,
Yeah,
so.
stormwater ordinance.
Stormwater ordinance,
So we don't need to repeat it.
right.
We probably don't, well, maybe we do address
I
that.
mean, and we can talk to him to see if, and if, to confirm that that's where it is in the stormwater section, and if it's not, then we would, I mean, he basically took it out because he felt like it wasn't necessary, that it would, I mean, we can put it in a guideline if it is not in this.
Okay, if you could double check that, please.
Yeah.
Okay, under roads, I want to make sure I understood that correctly. So we're saying that they can build a road. No new streets shall be constructed on lands equal to or greater than 35% slope, which I get that. Provided, however, that a portion of the street on the land equal to or greater than 35% slope may be constructed if it does not exceed a length of 100 feet. So that's a really steep, short road, right? Is that the interpretation of that?
Yeah.
It just means you can have a really steep, short road. Yeah, it would have to be, I mean, 35% grade is not ridiculous,
Like a driveway,
but there's a reason you don't want it to go more than, so it limits it to 100 feet before it has to be measured by staff for consideration other to be allowed. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that was the measurement. We talk about in, I'm on page 5 now, under building requirements and guidelines, under 1.
Yep.
It just talks about pads for tennis courts, swimming pools, and large lawns are prohibited. Is there a way to say, but not limited to those? I mean, just large pads, such as, but not limited to,
Basketball court.
tennis courts, swimming pools, and large lawns.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So you might want to just change the wording to read a little bit differently. It would just say, large pads such as,
Says Pat,
but not limited
but not
to,
limited, yeah.
and then give the examples. And all other, all other uses are prohibited.
Yeah, soccer field.
Yeah. Okay, then you're back to the design and professional. Is there a reason that we struck roof lines? That would have been, where was that? Yeah, it's on page 13
Right.
of the old document.
3 roofs.
Yeah, number 3.
I think it was just, again, it's an issue of,
There's this critical sentence in there that I think, if I remember correctly, let me go back and find it. Yeah, this goes back to my point earlier about the ridge line and the hill crests, where this is saying that the roof line cannot project above the ridge line more than 2 feet. And so what it's basically doing is not, you don't have this, trophy on top of the hill.
Yeah, right.
Because it's intended to preserve the look of our steep slope area. We've got some hilly area, let's not be looking at a whole bunch of spires that are new developed homes rather than tree line. So I'd like you guys to consider
so we
putting
could
that
add
back
back
in.
in some
Mhm.
version of the roof,
Yes, please.
You all okay with that? Okay.
so we can maybe shorten it, but keep it
Yeah.
the intent, okay?
Just, the intent is to make sure that we're not compromising the look of what has been an undeveloped area. Because it's,
How do you define that, Paul? I mean,
Well, I think-
I'm not arguing,
I think just like it is there. I think you don't have to say much more than what's already there. By saying, you can still develop in that area, it's just that it can't protrude more than 2 feet above the,
I think you could take
Tree
the
line.
first sentence and then the last sentence. So you take what he just said, and then the last sentence, a slope angle of a roof pitch should be at or below the angle of the natural hillside slope. And maybe those 2 lines would
mhm.
cover
But
it.
if we're now, my only problem with that, Robert, my question with that is, most of these pitches we have are 12-12s, right? They're this, and if we're at a 25% slope, that's a 4 pitch, which is right at the building code level. I mean, I don't think you're gonna see a whole lot of houses in Milton getting built with a 4 pitch, if I'm understanding that last
Right,
sentence, right? So, if our slopes are now maximized at 25%, I can guarantee nobody in this room has a house that's built with a 25% ridge line on their roof, right?
Right,
We're
they're
saying
all-
the pitch of the roof has to be 25%? I mean, I'm
Right,
not
no, I mean,
arguing,
that's
I'm
the
just
point,
saying,
right,
I
yeah.
don't,
I don't think I understood that. I don't think that's what
Well,
it's
so the
saying.
slope of the roof is like an old-fashioned.
the
Right.
should
slope
be
angle
an
of the pitch should be at above the angle of the hillside slope.
Oh,
We're saying the slope now can't be more than 25%. You're gonna have a lot of
yeah.
really flat roofs.
Right,
Yeah.
so we don't do, I mean, typically.
Yeah, you don't want that
do.
part in it.
That's like I grew up in an area with a lot of ranches, and they all have like almost flat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
you'd rather have a trophy house than that.
No, I want a trophy house below the ridge line.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, that was just a point. I don't think we wanna.
No, we don't want that.
That would be hard to do.
So maybe we don't capture that last sentence, but we do capture part of the first section of the paragraph.
All right.
And you understand the spirit of that?
Yeah.
Without wanting to define the ridge line, how, are y'all comfortable that y'all can sort out what the ridge line is?
Do we need a definition for ridge lines, like you're asking?
I don't wanna
see.
be the guy who defines it. I'm just
No,
wondering
no,
if they
no,
do.
no, I mean, staff
Yeah.
they may
Yeah.
have a place they can go and
Yeah,
pull what
that's
a
kinda,
definition of a ridge line.
That's
Yeah.
my question.
There might be in the original, actually.
I don't,
No, it's not.
no, I don't remember there being a ridge line definition.
I mean, what happens is, I can look at a definition for it.
Okay.
If you want that.
Well, I mean, just for y'all's sake, more than anything else, to be, I mean,
Well,
'cause that way, if nobody knows really what it is, it's gonna be hard to, yeah.
So we'll look into that. I mean, it could default to just Merriam-Webster, or I can see if there's something more specific. I mean, that's what we do. If it applies, then I don't need to add into something else. And if it doesn't, we
Okay.
can add a definition for ridgeline.
It's a pickup truck from Toyota, right? Or Honda, I mean.
Right, that's all I had.
Somebody's
too much.
warming up their
More than
computer.
13 minutes, though.
Sounds like a baked potato.
You got anything, Fred? You
No,
got-
I
okay.
hate- I had three of the ones Paul's already.
Any other discussion before I make Paul make the motion?
Whatever we said, right?
Oh, that's funny.
I'm cool with that. All right. Ready, Paul?
Yeah, I'm gonna make the motion, and I'm gonna go through every single one of my.
No, well, I mean,
No.
I made notes, but
No,
didn't
I
take
mean,
it.
I think we got it.
You got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And if you don't have it, call me, and
I
I will.
will.
go.
I'm
Okay.
sure. You can
Then
remind me.
Someone else
At
make
your
the
house.
motion. Someone else make the motion.
That's it, yeah. So the
He'll come
motion
over
is we need to
Saturday
approve the changes per Paul Moore. Who's stomping his feet about it. All right, I move we approve RZ 16-05, consideration to create steep slope standards in Chapter 64, Article 17, Division 3, site improvement standards, as staff has presented with changes made during our December 28th Planning Commission meeting.
Cool.
Is that reasonable?
Yep.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, Robin, Kathy, got anything else for us?
So I guess next month, we're gonna have a couple text amendments, and then we're gonna have TSW.
Yeah, the crabapple placemaking plan will be coming before you. And we're also next month having a stakeholder meeting, you all should have got to save the date for the tree ordinance,
Yeah.
which is gonna be on a Monday
like-
night,
Yeah.
because the council is not meeting that night, so we thought we'd take that meeting night.
And then we're gonna we're gonna have the call for the, Unified Development Code.
Yes, the Unified Development Code, the submissions are due on January 13th, so that'll be underway shortly thereafter. So, we'll be busy.
Sounds good. Motion to adjourn. Anybody?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor,
Fred
say
and
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Fred, get out of here.
See, and just think, next year it could be 7:34 instead of 8.
Not bad, though.
No, it's good.
No,
You guys
that was
did
real
good.
good.
Okay, got through it. Well, I'll see you Tuesday. Yeah, and I'll be,
Sorry about that.
checking my,
You'll be writing it down.
yeah, right.
Did you send an email to?
I did, and they've been going through that, so. Only Andrew. To give.
We have to,
Hey, Peyton.
council doesn't have to reappoint as long as we carry over, but we do have to have elections. Robin, when do we do,
Yeah, today.
council doesn't have to reseat us, do they, for the new year?
Only
Only
during
if there
his
was a-
term.
If there's a
Like-
new,
Like when
term
Joe
change?
gets reelected and, term.
Okay.
Well, we do need to reelect you as the
oh,
chairman.
I guess we can do the chair.
No, I'm about to retire.
No, you're not.
You're retiring from everything.
I own that one, we got a damn good chair.
Oh,
And then Robin gets Starbucks.
I know,
Bye-bye.
28.
28.
I know, I get
what's it, 28?
of December. Oh, he's just signing
Oh.
the minutes.
No, that was,
Again, you,
I'm
please
glad.
note that I will not be here.
Yeah, I mean, like,
what, January?
No.
Okay.
he's gonna be in Beach Boy, you said,
Oh, that's right.
I'll be in Beach Boy.
You got your earplugs on, or
Hey.
are you gonna listen?
Of course, there's only like one original Beach Boy left, right?
If that.
Yeah, and even he's, I think, on life support.
Probably
has an oxygen
Isn't it-
up there, right?
Was it Brian Wilson, is that his name?
Yeah.
Brian Wilson, isn't that who it is?
Yep.
I think he's the only one
I think
that's still touring.
Yeah. We saw him about,
And he has moments where he's great, and he has moments where it's like, oh my
one that was fabulous the other night was Tony Bennett Special.